Let's just actually quickly go over some of the recent updates and see if you guys put twos in the chat if you guys want to talk about this, because this is the main global topic right now. Okay, so let's actually look at this one first.
I think Iran is in very bad shape. I think they're very desperate. We had a meeting that lasted 21 hours. We understand the situation better than anybody, and Iran's in very bad shape. And just so you understand, Iran will not have a nuclear weapon. Will not have. There is no way that they're going to get. They still want it, and they made that clear the other night. Iran will not have a nuclear weapon.
So this might sound repetitive, but the reason why it's important that President Trump says that is because it seemed like that was the main thing that caused the ceasefire negotiations to not work at
Droppers
all.
are gone.
But also, let's listen to this regarding the blockade.
I would say it's holding well. Their military is destroyed. Their whole navy is underwater. You know that 158 ships are gone. Their navy's gone. Most of their mine droppers are gone. We have a lot of people, as you know, at 10 o'clock tomorrow, we have a blockade going into effect. Other nations are working so that Iran will not be able to sell oil, and that will be very effective. But what we wanted.
By the way, that would be very, very effective. This seems like a really good plan if it works. This could end the Islamic Republic's war machine if they're not able to get oil and gas revenue.
Do is we want to, and again, we don't need it. What we notice and what we see and what I think is maybe my idea, maybe not, I don't know. But there are many boats heading toward our country to fill up with oil and then go and take it. So they're not going to go through the Hormuz Strait. And ultimately that'll be corrected. But in the meantime, they're using us. We have more oil because of drill, baby, drill. We have more oil than Russia and Saudi Arabia put together. So if you look at Russia and Saudi Arabia, two big ones, we have much more oil than they have put together. And what's happening is boats are coming over here, filling up. We don't have to go.
So here's an interesting thing. Brent is below 100 again. I know after all of this news, this is actually quite interesting that after all of this news regarding the ceasefire agreement not working out, it went to 102. So if given everything that is being discussed, you wouldn't have been made fun of if you thought that it's going to keep going up, but now it's back to 98, which is interesting. Then we had here Ghalibaf making this post saying, I don't know what the hell this is. What the hell is this here? But Ghalibaf posted on X saying, enjoy the current pump figures with the so-called blockade. Soon you'll be nostalgic for $4 or $5 gas. So gas stations near the White House is showing like 4, 5.8. And what is this? If anybody could tell me, what the fuck am I looking at here? I don't know what this is. Okay. But this guy that Ali was also celebrating as part of FTD, he posted this. He quote tweeted Ghalibaf, and he said, I could be wrong, but it's becoming increasingly clear that someone outside of Iran is running this account's content. And it's like in this post, it appears someone physically located outside of Iran took the screenshot. Oh, really? How? Google Maps is set to English, not Farsi. The device is configured for an English-speaking environment. The White House is tagged recently viewed. Okay. Well, I mean, recently viewed doesn't mean, well, okay, not recently viewed, not recently visited. A personalized indicator from a signed in Google account on an iPhone. Google services require a functioning connection to Google services, which are blocked for ordinary Iranians, both by the regime's own internet shutdown and by Google sanctions and compliance. Well, I don't know about that. He might have just okay, so he's saying that, but I don't know if that's good evidence, because somebody else somewhere might have shared this, that like, oh, look, gas prices are going up, and it became like more people shared it on social media, and then the pro-regime Iranians were sharing the same image that some Americans were sharing, and then Ghalibaf got it from there. So that might be the reason. Unless you can't find that image anywhere else, then that would. That's another video from President Trump. Let's see what he says here.
Iran back to the negotiating table? Is it to open up the strait so that gas prices ultimately come down?
Maybe everything. I mean, both of those things, certainly, and more. We can't let a country blackmail or extort the world, because that's what they're doing. They're really blackmailing the world. We're not going to let that happen. And, the amazing thing is we don't, can you believe this? We don't use the strait. We don't need the strait. We have our own oil and gas, much more than we need. We have more oil and gas than Saudi Arabia. Think of this. We produce more. Saudi Arabia, and add Russia to it. Substantially more. And by next year, we'll have double that amount. So we don't need it, but the world needs it. And many ships are heading to our country right now as we speak to load up with the best. Really, I guess you could say, somebody said the best and sweetest. I don't know exactly what sweet is, but when it relates to oil, it's a good thing. But they're coming to our country right now. There are many boats coming to our country. Now, it could very well be this is going to be settled before that. We've been called this morning by the right people, the appropriate people, and they want to.
Okay, this is big news. He's saying we've been called by the right people, by the appropriate people. So I think the regime is really trying to be flexible behind the scenes without making the pro-regime people angry.
Work a deal. They would like to work a deal.
Is it your anticipation, Mr. President, that other countries will assist in this effort to blockade Iran and those?
Yeah, other countries are going to also.
Which countries, sir?
We don't need other countries, frankly, but they've offered the services. We'll let it be known.
I heard UK has good minesweepers.
Probably tomorrow.
Has the blockade started, sir?
Yeah, started 10 o'clock.
All right, so just a couple of other updates before we go to you. Look at this. He's saying Iran has threatened to close Bab el-Mandeb now. Wow. They go away to the Red Sea. So yeah, guys, it's between the Bab el-Mandeb and Suez. The Red Sea is there. So if they close that, they will have to go all around Africa. That would be a big deal. I don't know if they can do that. I don't think they can do that. Like, they don't have enough missiles to be able to, they don't have missiles that could threaten Bab el-Mandeb in a very effective way. That's much farther away from the Strait of Hormuz. And also, they don't have a navy. Like, how are they going? Like, I don't know. Maybe Jeffrey could also tell me if this is actually a legitimate threat or not. Let's actually listen to the video because he explains it.
Absolutely. We're talking about Bab el-Mandeb, which is a different area where the Iranians could use their proxy, the Houthis in Yemen, to try to block off international shipping. And they have threatened to do this if there is a blockade on their ports near the Strait of Hormuz. Now, we saw in the past the Houthis getting directly involved in this conflict. And Brian, you and I have talked about this. It's a major concern that the Iranians may try to use one of their largest proxies, the Houthis, to launch missiles or drones at vessels in the Red Sea. This is absolutely. We're talking about.
Mandeb is here. It connects the Gulf of Aden. It's basically the southern part of Saudi Arabia. This is where, remember where Yemen was closing, like being disruptive to global trade, because they're closer to Bab el-Mandeb Strait right here. So the Islamic Republic is now threatening to close Bab el-Mandeb. I mean, they used to do it, but their Yemeni proxies are doing that. But the Yemeni proxies are not showing up right now, and they're not participating as much. So I don't know if that's a credible threat or not. I guess we'll see. But that kind of shows that they're desperate. Guys, let me know in the chat, because I keep hearing some Israelis tell me that Channel 14 is not reliable and they make stuff up sometimes. Is that the case? But Channel 14 reveals behind the scenes quotes from the negotiation, Pezeshkian to Arakshi, an economic disaster if there is no deal. And so IRGC Commander Vahidi, we haven't even buried Khamenei, and Ghalibaf is shaking hands with those who killed them. Like, is a Channel 14 the only channel that is reporting these? These quotes are very significant. So Vahidi is the head of IRGC, as you guys know. So Channel 14 is now saying that this guy Vahidi here is basically taking positions against Ghalibaf over here, saying that Ghalibaf is talking to Americans even though we haven't buried the supreme leader yet. And then Pezeshkian, the president to Arakshi, telling him that an economic disaster is on the way if there's no deal. I mean, this is less significant than the second quote here. Vahidi and Ghalibaf turning against each other, like so openly is a big deal. But I don't know if anybody other than Channel 14 has reported this, and who's their sources. Let me see in the chat. So Amir is saying, Armin, imagine a channel with puppets who like to oh my god, okay, lick BB's boots. Okay, so you guys, well, I mean, I'm not talking about the internal politics of Israeli. I'm talking about whether, like, I'm not talking about their opinion pieces. I'm talking about the facts. When they report these facts, do they make this stuff up, or do they actually usually have credible sources for this? And then we also saw the US Navy has issued a warning to all vessels in the Strait of Hormuz. Yeah, let me mute this. In the all vessels in the Strait of Hormuz, stating that any boat departing Iranian ports within the next 2 hours may face interception, boarding, and possible capture. So we went from the Islamic Republic blocking the Strait of Hormuz to now United States blocking the Strait of Hormuz. And it's interesting that it's not being reflected in oil prices, which somebody could explain that to me. And then we also have U.S. naval blockade of Iran has officially began after the military move to restrict ships entering the existing Iranian ports, marking a major escalation in tensions. So this was reported by Reuters. And then we also had this. Hold on, let me see if I could play this. Is that why Brent is not up? And then we also had some. Oh, wait, we're right now sharing my screen? Oh, sorry, guys. Here, let me share that again. Sorry.
A ship tracking firm reports 120.
Wait, you guys saw this one, right? This one you already saw. This one was being shared. This one was not being shared, correct? Let me know in the chat. So let's watch this one more
A
time.
ship tracking firm reports 121 empty oil tankers are making their way to the United States of America. 68 of those 121 vessels are very large crude carriers capable of carrying 2 million barrels apiece. President Trump has urged countries squeezed by Iran's disruption of the Strait of Hormuz to turn to American energy supplies instead. The president told Fox, quote, China can send their ships to the U.S., China can send their ships to Venezuela, while also saying that empty oil-carrying ships from many nations are all headed to the U.S. to load up. That from the president of the United States.
It's actually quite remarkable that the Strait of Hormuz is this close, and that we're still experiencing Brent crude oil prices below 100. Like, that is crazy. That I never like. And in fact, not only that, it never even hit 120 so far. I mean, it might in the future, but the fact that it hasn't yet is crazy. I mean, it might be like the US influence and the Venezuela influence, that might be it. But also we have now, let's look at this. China, we mentioned China. So Chinese defense ministry said this: the Chinese ships continue to move in and out of the waters of the Strait of Hormuz. We have trade and energy agreements with Iran, which we will respect and abide by. So the Chinese are putting this out there. Say we expect others not to interfere our affairs in our affairs. So this is going to be an interesting challenge, because the United States, that we're actually might be able to see some tension between U.S. military and Chinese military now, because the U.S. is now saying that nobody gets to go through the Strait of Hormuz, and the Chinese are saying, "Well, we will." So this is like escalating to a whole new level. So we have to keep an eye on this, and this is why President Trump is telling the Chinese, like, "Hey, just come get your oil from me. Just come get your oil from me." So we'll see if what happens. This is actually getting, we're seeing tension between world powers. So this is very interesting. And then we have this joke, this clown. This is the speaker of Khatam al-Anbiya. So guys, if you don't know, Khatam al-Anbiya is one of the most important parts of the IRGC. And for reference, the Abdullahi is the head of the Khatam al-Anbiya. So that guy is the speaker of Khatam al-Anbiya. He's not the head of Khatam al-Anbiya. Ali Abdullahi, this guy, he's the head of Khatam al-Anbiya. So I'm just letting you know. And he's the main speaker that we keep saying every day. So saying breaking Iranian military spokesman is saying warships are approaching Strait of Hormuz. We will deal with them severely. If America starts a ground war, we are going to deploy 1 million of our troops. Okay, so just wanted to see the update from the Islamic Republic. Let me see if this guy is reporting the same thing from this guy or something else. It's saying just in following the start of President Trump's blockade, Iran is threatening to retaliate against ports in other Gulf countries, so Persian Gulf countries. They may not have much of a navy anymore, but Iran still has thousands of one-way attack drones. 800 ships, including 400 tankers, are currently stranded in the region due to ongoing conflict per the UA. By the way, guys, the what the Islamic Republic still has is a lot of speedboats. I mean, a lot of their ships are now been sunk and they're at the bottom of the sea, but they do still have a lot of speedboats, and it's really harder to hit all of them because there's a lot of them. And even though they could still cause a lot of risk, not to military ships, but they could still cause a lot of risk to commercial ones, including oil tankers, and that's the issue here.
Iran is warning its military may retaliate, threatening a wreckage and a reckoning. An Iranian military spokesperson saying if the security of the ports of the Islamic Republic of Iran in the waters of the Persian Gulf and the Sea of Oman is threatened, no port in the Persian Gulf and the Sea of Oman will remain safe. Now, a UAE official here estimates that 800 ships have been left stranded as a result of all this mess, and about 400 of them are fuel tankers.
That's all I have. So let's go to you guys now. All right. Who wants to respond
to this? Let's start with Jeffrey.
So, with regards to the difference between when he's like, I don't understand the difference between sweet or sour oil. So, just for the people in the chat, they don't know. Sweet oil is usually cleaner, easier. It's a little more expensive to purchase. That said, it's a lot easier to refine. Whereas sour, and that's like stuff you see that Russia or the Mullah regime produces, it's a lot harder to process. It's cheaper to purchase. It's definitely more costly downstream. That's going to hurt like the Chinese Communist Party's, what do they call that? It's almost like their small cottage industry that was set up to try and process that stuff. That's going to hurt a lot. As far as like the Mullah regime targeting the other strait, I can't pronounce it right because my mouth doesn't want to work right today. That's just called Madab. The Gate of Tears. Anyway, I mean, that's the English version.
Bubble Mandab.
Yeah. I always, I don't know. I get tongue tied around that one. So they're obviously going to use the Houthis, Yemenis. They do have the ability to hold ships at risk with the very same kind of asymmetric approach that the Mullah regime is invested in. So one-way long-range attack drones, speedboats with one anti-ship missile on them. And as far as what Armin had said, he's not wrong. Armin is very much correct again on what the Mullah regime called its mosquito fleet, right? Which is like thousands of these fast attack boats that were set up to engage in swarm attacks and kind of like offset. It's like an asymmetric counter to us having like technological superiority, like qualitative superiority. We've been working on dealing with that. That's one of the reasons why directed energy is a big deal. It's also why Donald said, if you come near one of our boats, you're going to get blown up in the way we blew shit up in, say, Venezuela. Right? That's going to be real bad for them. So, as far as the Chi-Coms are concerned, the reason we're shutting down the strait is this. It's very clear that the Mullah regime is getting material support from their patron states, disproportionately the Chinese Communist Party. The Chinese Communist Party, as Armin rightly touched on yesterday, while the Mullah regime is pseudo-theologically motivated and they're inelastic, The people they buy weapons from are not pseudo theologically motivated. They want money, and the Chicoms will take oil as money. That's why the Chicoms are giving the Mullah regime restricted stuff to build more friggin' like, what is it, one way track drones and all that other shit. Well, that's great. You're no longer going to be able to take Iranian oil. And I would suggest you not try to bump chests with our Navy in the Strait of Hormuz because we're going to fuck you up. Like the Chi-Coms can hold things at risk over the Taiwanese Strait. The Chinese Communist Party, as Ali rightly said the other day, is not refined its blue water force projection capability. You don't want to start challenging us in the Strait. That would be very bad.
Okay, please, we have Ali.
I think Ghalibaf's ex is actually in California. I see a lot of people, like I've seen a lot of people over the past few weeks being like, this guy's Twitter is not from Iran. It's from like the US somewhere. And they're like trying to narrow it down. So far I see California, but who knows really. Anyway, when Hemmati came back from the negotiations, he talked to Pezeshkian, or rather Pezeshkian probably bugged him like 20 times. And Hemmati, which is the head of the central bank of the Islamic Republic, told the president Pezeshkian that inflation is heading to 180%, and that it's going to take us years and years to rebuild and this and that. I think everything that just happened is kind of forcing the Islamic Republic to go back to the negotiating table, because we're hearing reports now that they want to have another round of talks on Thursday in Geneva, Vienna, whatever city that they can find.
Wait, where did you hear that? I haven't seen that.
I'll find
Let's
it.
see. Okay.
Okay, next is Danesh.
Just wanted to quickly second what Ali said. Actually, it was like the comment was pretty genius. I loved it. The recently viewed, I kind of experienced it myself. I was super naive. Like a couple years ago, like 3 4 years ago, I was going to Iran, and I thought like a great gift is Google Home, and I can just like make sure like one of these Nest Hubs that I can put some photos for my parents so that they can see us, and like everything in my mind was great, except Google services is not allowed in Iran. I tried really hard. I tried the VPN. I tried like so many different ways. It was impossible. And what he meant, like I think his point was that to have any sort of recently viewed or anything like that to be shown on your maps, you have to be signed in through your Google services, and it have to work. So definitely the screenshot
Mhm.
comes from outside of Iran. That's for sure. So it's just wanted to say that comment was genius. Also, wanted to mention that I'm not to say that in the future it's impossible to have oil countries being relying on um, oil coming from Strait of Hormuz less. But I would say that what Fox says about the number of ships heading to US is a little bit how to put that. 121 seems pretty normal to me. I'm not so sure if that is actually the number that is always on the heading to US, but US in general sells about like 4 to 4.5 million barrels of oil per day. And the ships that carry oil, they don't really like, they're not fast. They're efficient, but they're not fast. Like they would move in at the speed of a bicycle, right? And you gotta I mean, think about it. A big one would carry around like 2 million barrels, small one like 500,000, and keep the speed in mind, keep the destinations in mind. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised to see like 120 ships heading to US all the time. The ships that are on the sea, and I think they were like smart with the titles, with the news being like 121 is heading to US, not just started to think to head to US. So I think that's kind of like the number that they all already have. And also keep in mind that for refineries, it's very, very, very challenging to change the place
Yeah.
that you get the oil from. simply because the situation, since the oil is different, then the conditions are different, then the corrosion that you are, everything about the design of the refineries can be different, especially if you're moving from somewhere from like Middle East to US. So it's kind of like it will be very different. Hence, it's something that, if happens, would happen pretty much not in near future. I would say. Let's just put it that way. Which would kind of like Jeffrey also pointed out really clearly, and I love that, Jeffrey. That basically it also is an issue for China now, because it's not that they just lost the cheap oil. It's that they counted on the cheap. Like it's kind of like if US manages to kind of like force China to change the oil that they're getting, that is also a big hit, especially like in short term to the energy that they can get, because it takes time to build that infrastructure to kind of like get the refineries done, etc.
Okay. Well, I want to see Brent. I want to see. I was looking at Brent prices. That's why I said I just want to see Jeffrey respond to that. But before, let's look at some how this looks. Hundreds of super tankers are headed towards the U.S. Gulf. And so just look at what that looks like. Look at all of this. Everybody is going towards the U.S. Usually, Brent is higher than WTI crude. Is that correct? But now it's getting closer. They're pretty close because the demand for American oil is increasing. Also, one thing else I wanted to show you guys, because Danish was pointing that out. So this account, this is getting a lot of attention. This account is saying the main strategist and content architect behind the account associated with Ghalibaf resides in the United States, and his identity has now been exposed. Maysam Zamanabadi, I think. So it goes and says, since Ghalibaf himself has no real command of the English language or the complexities of international politics and media, one of his longtime associate, Maysam Zamanabadi, has taken charge of managing his account and content. And then it says he is responsible for shaping the account's media presence, crafting English language posts, memes, and highly polished messaging as part of a broader coordinated media strategy aimed at influencing political and public discourse in the United States during wartime. Saying recently he repeatedly appeared from California's from California on state-run television in Iran as a media warfare expert, analyzing how to influence political currents in the United States and against the Trump administration. So this is him. Let's actually play this.
در واقع جریان رسانه‌ای توی ایالات متحده رو میشه
I just wanted to see what it sounds like. I'm not going to play the whole thing. Maysam is now a graduate in media psychology from Fielding Graduate University in California and primarily resides in Glendora, Los Angeles, and frequently travels to Iran. He's considered one of the figures in managing and training media cyber teams. Shouldn't he I don't know the laws in the United States how that works, but I would think he should be arrested if he's working with the enemy. Like, isn't that, can't you just arrest him because he's working with America, like for America's enemy, or is that not a thing? And then Mason began his career in media as a sports photographer. Okay, we're getting into too much detail. I don't think we need to see the rest. But we go into wow, we go into so much detail about the history of this guy. Wow. Okay. So that's all I have. I'm not going to go into more detail. Anyways, Jeffrey, was there anybody who wanted to respond to this? I do want to see Jeffrey's response to some of the point that Danish brought up.
So if you like, is it Danish or Dinesh? How would I say it correctly? I don't want to butcher it.
I mean, I honestly, I'm totally fine. Like, I'm not sensitive at all. It's Danish, but like you can call me
Danish.
Danesh, whatever. It's
I
totally
was trying
fine.
to do my best. So very apt observation. Again, the Chinese Communist Party, the oil it gets, it is the Chinese Communist Party spent a long time building these, like, it's not exactly a mom and pop, although there's much smaller refineries throughout mainland China to refine the sour crude that comes out of Iran. losing those is going to have a really, really, really bad impact on that. And that's going to exacerbate all these other intrastate pressures the Chinese Communist Party is facing, tofu dredge projects. And I mean, I could go on and on with it. Anyway, so yeah, they're definitely going to feel that. I mean, Ryan Macbeth just put out a post today. He did a pretty good assessment as the overall economic impact of what would happen if the Chinese Communist Party had lost access to Mullah regime oil. About from like 60 days, because you're very accurate in changing over those refineries to refine like from sour to sweet crude and all this other stuff. You're right on the money. They're going to have in the short term, they'll have some spikes. After 60 days, they start having some really, really like fucking bad shit happen to them economically. In 120 days, you're talking about structural economic collapse that would bring into the question the existence of the Chinese Communist Party. Like in 60 days, they're going to have to start making some very serious choices between military support, like fuel for like trying to do their bullshit against Taiwan, and or civilian, like funding stuff, producing textiles and all that stuff. In 120 days, they're screwed. Like they would be toast. So yeah, they're gonna feel that shit. As far as the law that guy's violating, so there's a couple of regs on the books when it comes to the Treasury Department that the previous administration, populated by Obama douche canoes who were very friendly to the Mullah regime, didn't observe. There's other ones called the Foreign Agents Registration Act. If you are acting on the behest of a foreign power, you have to register with FARA. If you are not registering with FARA, you're done. And this administration will indeed punish you, which is exactly why this administration is like, wow, the grandniece or daughter or granddaughter or whoever was related to Soleimani was posting some stupid shit in LA. Well, your asses are getting kicked out of America because this isn't Biden. These aren't Obama officials. You're done. You can go sit there since you think it's so awesome while you're like sunning yourself at the pool in a bikini while like brave Persian women are getting acid thrown in their face because they didn't wear a beekeeper suit. Well, now your ass can go back there and you can live under the very things you're advocating for. What's my point? My point is, this is okay. Also important why you guys do what you do, especially people like Dinesh and Ali with all your machine learning and competitive open source intelligence assessment and fleshing out these guys' networks. If they're here, this administration will absolutely punish that guy. In fact, I'll make sure of it. I'll make sure to call right after the show and just call a friend of mine.
It is pretty wild to know that, like, if your bangs slip out in Iran, you could be beaten up or worse. But, like, these girls are out here begging for a nip slip on the outside in their bikinis, and, like, that shit is just straight. So,
Well, BT, we're actually moving the other way around. Right now, the Islamic Republic prefers hijabless women over hijabi women, and they're highlighting them more. And if we keep going in this direction, the Islamic Republic is going to bring topless women into the streets holding the Islamic Republic and Hezbollah flags pretty soon if we keep going this way.
okay,
We
so
might be able to free the nipple in Iran before everywhere else.
you took my joke, Armin.
Right? Right.
Dang it. Okay, fine. Hey, you know what? You guys have earned it. If we're gonna free the nipple anywhere, it needs to be Iran. Next to respond, I want to say it was Sadato. If I skipped somebody for this response, I will go up and check. Danny, are you with us and ready?
So regarding China, the potential standoff with the U.S. fleet blockade, that's potentially coming up like a Bay of Pigs type situation. From my understanding, China gets only 10% of its oil from Iran, while Iran relies on that for 90% of its exports. Is that correct? Does that sound right?
Something like that. Yeah, something
Okay,
close to that.
so will China fight, the US for that 10%? I mean, it seems like they would be able to get that from somewhere else. I guess Russia's not in
Yeah,
great shape
well,
right now, but
we have to look at the supply demand and stuff, right? So yeah, they can get it from somewhere else, right? But if they have to get it from somewhere else, they have to get it from at a higher price because there's a cut in supply. So if you're they already get oil from Russia, but now if they have to get more oil from Russia, Russia is going to demand a higher price because you rely on me and more than before, right? So 10% might seem very insignificant if we look at the because Islamic Republic is looking at an absolute collapse, right? Those are numbers that we talk about when it comes to the Islamic Republic's economic dependency. But for China, 10%, like they're not looking at like a crisis like the Islamic Republic, right? 10% is a big number, right? So if you compare it to the 90% when it comes to the reliance of Islamic Republic, it looks very small, but it's not small. 10% of your energy coming from a country, that's like a huge number, right? So, and given that how China is very sensitive about like their GDP numbers and economic, like every year they're trying to make sure that they hit certain numbers, right? I mean, even when they're trying to deflate the economy to avoid a bubble, they still have certain like very specific metrics that they need to hit, right? So them cutting that 10% and relying on Russia and buying oil at the higher price is going to really mess up with a lot of their numbers. And they don't like that, right? Does that make sense?
So you're saying a serious standoff is likely then at the blockade?
Well, actually, I don't. Actually, no, I wasn't. I was just saying that China is not going to like this at all. When it comes to whether this means a conflict is likely or not, that would be more of a. It's not just an economic thing that we have to take into account. We also have to take like psychological warfare and bluffing into account and military ability. Like we have to see, like we know, for example, United States military ability, especially so far away from the Pacific, is so much higher than whatever the Chinese could do, right? But we also know that from a political perspective, the Americans prefer not to get into a conflict with the Chinese at this moment, like militarily. So China might want to, like, I don't know what the Chinese are thinking right now. Are they going to consider this to be bluffing? So even though, of course, if there's any head-to-head conflict between the Chinese and the Americans, Americans are going to come, on top. But that would be like, given everything the United States was dealing with right now, military conflicts with the Chinese is not something that they want to add to that. And maybe I don't know what the Chinese are thinking, but maybe the Chinese are thinking like, yeah, they're not going to do this, right? So let's just go through with this and see. But again, I don't want to risk it, right? If I was China, so here's the thing: if I'm America, I don't want to deal with the Chinese. I don't want to deal with a military conflict with the Chinese at all. Okay, but that's also true if I'm Chinese, right? Even though that's true with the Americans, that is 1,000 times more true for the Chinese, right? They don't want to get into a military conflict with the Americans either. So, and also China is really big on saving face. So we also have to take it. This is the psychological part of it. Like, they don't want to get into a military conflict with the United States, but having the Americans telling them that you don't get to go through the Strait of Hormuz and the Chinese submitting to that is also very humiliating. So this is like a tough situation for the Chinese to be in, right? Do we risk military conflict with the Americans, or do we accept this humiliation, right? So I don't exactly know what goes, especially because the Chinese internal politics is very close. It's really hard to figure out what they're thinking right now, but it's complicated. What do you think yourself?
I think Taiwan is more of a priority for China, so they might just cut their losses. Also, crazy
Yeah.
thought came to my mind. What if China says, "Hey, you want the Strait open? I want the Strait open. Let's cooperate." That would be
Oh,
weird, but
that would be weird, but that would be like ideal. That Trump would love that. Trump. Here's the thing. Here's the interesting thing between the difference between President Trump and other presidents when it comes to China. President Trump sees China more of an economic competitor, adversary, but compared to other presidents, less of a military adversary. Like he doesn't see China as, like, he constantly suggests and does things that may suggest that you could actually work with the Chinese from a military strategic perspective. when you see him being at conflict with them, it's mostly over economic stuff, not over military stuff. Like he's much less aggressive when it comes to protecting Taiwan, for example, or defending the countries in the region like Japan, South Korea, like Philippines or Vietnam. He's like less interested in that. He's much less interested. Like, for example, the Japanese were very surprised that when Japan took a strong position over Taiwan and China retaliated, they were expecting America to come and, you know, have a much stronger position in favor of Japan, and none of that happened, right? So it seemed like, you know, like Trump at least is less interested in getting involved with defending the countries in the Pacific against China. Any type of competition or positions he takes against China has more of an economic nature than a military nature. So far, at least. That might change.
Yeah, I think he's meeting with Xi very soon.
Yes, he speaks about him in a very friendly way. And by the way, this goes in line with the Donroe doctrine, right? So I wouldn't be surprised, in the same way that Trump is not less interested in defending Ukraine, it might be true that he's also less interested in defending Taiwan, and he's more focused on the Donroe doctrine. That might be the case. Yeah. But yeah, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Personally, I think China would be, if they're humiliated now, they would be more humiliated to lose to the United States. So they might as well just shut up and not have a loss and feel humiliated. Okay, next we have a question anonymously from the chat. The question is, do you expect shell bios to be used in the operations in Iran?
What to be used in Operation in Iran?
Shell bios?
Yeah, what is that? Maybe
Is that
that's a
like
Jeffrey
biological
question.
weapons?
I think that's a Jeffrey question. I think that's something I doubt. I don't know less about Jeffrey. Jeffrey, do you know what the question is?
Shell bio? Oh, bioweapons. Yeah. Well, so
Okay.
yeah, that's a very serious issue, right? I mean, there was some intelligence that showed that the Mullah regime in the beginning part of the most recent resistance was using different levels of chemical weapons at a small level, at like a smaller dispersed level. Actually, Armin, you and Goldie reported on that, remember? When the friggin' mullahs were hitting. I wouldn't put it past them, the mullah regime, from looking at that. Are you asking about with regards to the mullahs or the Chaikams? If as far as the Chinese Communist Party is concerned, the Chinese Communist Party has a very regressive and robust illegal clandestine offensive bioweapons program. No doubt about it. And they're open about it. It's in their unrestricted warfare doctrine. It was reiterated in a paper that was put out by Colonel Kuo, who was identified by our intelligence as being part and parcel of the Chinese Communist Party's illicit clandestine offensive bioweapons program. He wrote a paper in 2004 called Ultra Micro Non-Lethal and Reversible. It's also one of the reasons why in his first term, President Trump had the Office of the National Counterintelligence Executive, which is like the head of our counterintelligence, put out, and the DNI put out a report regarding the extreme risk of the Chinese Communist Party investing heavily in genetic sequencing companies and gaining whole swaths of genomic data regarding different demographics.